Hello and good morning friends, welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, with our ongoing series on organizational behavior, today we would be talking on emotional intelligence in leadership styles, and for this very discussion we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Namita Rajput. Dr. Namita Rajput is principal in Sri Aurobindo College, University of Delhi. Dr. Rajput is a dynamic professor who believes in giving most of her knowledge by sharing her experience through these lectures, and we believe that you will be learning a lot through her today. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Namita Rajput. Hello ma'am, welcome to the Detractors lecture.
Good morning friends. Today we have a very important topic called emotional intelligence in leadership styles. So the agenda of this lecture is as follows. First is introduction, followed by history of emotional intelligence, then followed by the strength and the weaknesses of the emotional intelligence. Then we have emotional intelligence implementation within the leadership styles, then the application of leadership emotional intelligence, and followed by the conclusions. So what is the concept of emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is a leader's ability to continuously monitor their own emotions, continuously monitor other emotions, encourage positive change in the organization with the sole purpose to enhance the business performance. So this is a very important definition as is given, and it states that emotional intelligence is all about monitoring your emotions followed by monitoring other emotions, so that at the end and eventually we are able to enhance the overall business performance. Now basically when you talk about the emotional intelligence, we have two categories of emotional intelligence competency. First is the personal competency, followed by the social competency and the social awareness. When you talk about the personal competency, the first is the self-awareness, self-management, and the second is the social competency and the social awareness, that is the social awareness followed by the social skills. So the categories are very important. One is on the personal perspective and the other is on the social perspective. When you talk about the personal competencies, that is, you know yourself, that is the self-awareness, that where you are lacking, what are your emotions are all about, etc. Followed by how you are able to manage that, that is the self-management in relation to the emotions. Then we have the social competency and the social awareness, which states that you are aware of the society and you have a complete awareness of what the social perspective is all about, followed by the social skills you have. Now there are four key components of emotional intelligence. So let us do them one by one. The first is the perceiving emotions, that is, identify the emotions and feelings, expressing emotions accurately, discriminating between the accurate and inaccurate feelings. Then you have using emotions, that is redirecting the attention to important issues, generating emotions that facilitate the decision making, using the mood changes to consider the multiple points of view, using different emotions to encourage the various approaches to problem solving. So these are very pertinent components of the personal emotional intelligence components. That is, you have to see and perceive the emotions in a very corrective manner. That is, you have to first identify what kind of feelings are there, followed by how you are able to express the emotions accurately. Now having an accuracy in the emotions is most important, because unless and until you know which type of an emotion it is very difficult to manage and monitor. Then you have a discrimination between what is an accurate emotion and what is an inaccurate emotion. So that is the first thing, you have to perceive the emotions in a very right manner and right perspectives. Then you have to use these emotions which are very pertinent in the decision making, etc. You have to redirect the attention on the vital issues, on the pertinent issues. You have to generate the emotions basically which helps in decision making, and using different emotions to encourage the various approaches to problem solving. Now the third very important component of the emotional intelligence is understanding of emotions. Now here you have to comprehend the complex emotions, you have to causes of the complex emotions, followed by transitions from one emotion to another. Then we have to manage the emotions, that is being aware of one's positive as well as the negative emotions. You have to solve emotionally the driven problems. You have to be very reflectively monitoring the emotions. So the first two components which we study is that you have to perceive the emotions, because the perception differs from one person to another person. According to one person, the half glass is filled, another to one person, the half glass is empty. So it is how you perceive the emotions, whether they are correct or inaccurate, whether they are accurate or inaccurate, whether they are correct or wrong, whether they are inclusive or exclusive, whether they are good or bad. So you have to have a very complete understanding of perceiving the emotions, because this is the first step, and if the perception is wrong, the everything whatever you will do will also be wrong. So first you are able to perceive the emotions, then you have to use those emotions to help them in decision making process. Then after that you have to understand the emotions in a deep manner, in terms of you have to have a very strong convictions about the emotions, you have to comprehend the complex situations and emotions which are around you. Then you have to understand that why and what are the basic reasons of these complex emotions which are around you. Then you have to understand the transition of one emotion to another. That is from happy to bad, from happy to sad, from sad to happy, etc. There is a transition because we are human beings, so we keep changing our emotions every now and then depending upon the dynamic situation and the changing situations around us. So you have to understand these things very well in terms of the transition of emotions from one state to another state. Then you have to manage the emotions. Managing is a most efficient task which a person should do, and if he is able to manage these emotions, then you have won the world, etc. So definitely when you talk about managing of the emotions, you have to be aware of the positive as well as the negative emotions. You have to solve emotionally driven problems, and you have to reflectively monitor the emotions, that is what is causing what and what is due to what reasons the emotions are changing from one phase to another phase. So let us now come on to the historical perspective of emotional intelligence. As you see in this diagram, this is an emotional intelligence. On the left hand side you see the heart-based leadership, that is hugs. On the next side, that is on the right side, you see the cognitive intelligence, that is the mind-based leadership. So here your mind is working and the first hand your heart is working. So you have to make a judicious balance between what your heart says and what your mind says. Now coming on to the ancient historical perspective of the emotional intelligence, this is within the context of creating a balance between the heart-based leadership, that is emotional intelligence, and the mind-based leadership, that is the cognitive intelligence. Most of the major religious texts and teachings attempt to address the subject of these two ways of leading and thinking. Although beyond the scope of this work and proposed herein as a backdrop of historical perspective, religious texts and teachings may merit further investigation and study of emotional intelligence. That is, you see the Hinduism 2000 BCE, then you have Judaism 1000 BCE, then you have Buddhism, Taoism and Confucianism in 600 BCE, followed by Christianity 100 CE and Islam 600 CE. So the Bhagavad Gita primary theme is based on a paralyzing the heart-based versus mind-based dilemma faced by one of the Hinduism most illustrative leaders, Arjuna. That is, he used to see the perspective, he used to see the target with one single eye. And of course, the first and the famous ancient incident of his cleverness as a judge, when two women came to the court with a baby whom both women claimed as their own. So these are, the mind games of the emotional intelligence which you have to be very particular about. Now coming on to the social intelligence shows that itself abundantly in a nursery, on a playground, in barracks and factories and sales room, but it eludes the formal standardized conditions of testing the laboratory. Now there are certain recent historical perspective also. In 1919s began an explosion of research into emotional intelligence, because this theme was taking up and picking up very fast. So there are a lot of empirical studies which are moving on, there are a lot of research which is moving on to have the insight of the emotional intelligence. So there was an explosion in this regard when they used to do this study of emotional intelligence. That is in 1990, Salovey and Mayer begins to define the emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor their own and the others' feelings and emotions, followed by 1995, 2001, 2005, 2006 Goldman. It starts the emotional intelligence explosion. So overall, if you see these perspectives, that in the yesteryears the concept of emotional intelligence was not that famous, but yes, because of the human mind, because of the human emotions, it started picking up, because it used to affect the decision making process of the human beings. So as a matter of fact, the research started, and it took the form of an explosion way back in 1990 till now. There are n number of studies in this regard to study in deep the emotional intelligence and its impact on the human mind, and its impact on the social performance, and its impact on the financial performance of the overall organization. So let us now do the emotional intelligence, the strengths and the weaknesses. Now coming on to the strengths of the emotional intelligence, that is, why do leaders use this intelligence? Empathy and sensitive to people's feeling, self-aware and able to control their impatience or anger so that they do short-circuit conversations, ability to react well to change, and are good at building relationships. So this is basically the strength of emotional intelligence, that you are able to have a good relationship with your people around, with your employees around, because you are able to understand what they are feeling. You start developing that empathetic attitude because you are seeing from an emotional point of view, and a judicious balance between the heart and the mind, and you'll be able to see the change in a very nice perspective, and you are able to manage the anger also, because you are taking care of yourself, that is your own emotions, followed by the emotions of the others also. So the strength of the emotional intelligence leaders is as follows: the benefits of emotional intelligent leaders and the benefits to the organization. So this is a very important parameter which we must understand. Participative management, putting people at ease, self-awareness, straightforwardness and composure, building and mending relationships. Now this is all about the emotional factors which the leaders have. That is, they start doing including people when they are taking a decision making process, followed by they are keeping the people first in all decision making. That is, what will be the impact of this decision on the people, followed by the self-awareness program, that is, what do you think of yourself, your emotions, and then of course your composure, your straightforwardness, followed by mending and taking care of the relationships. So this is how we are able to manage the emotional intelligence at the leadership level. Now coming on to the benefits, if you are putting this perspective at the workplace, what are the benefits or the outcomes of emotional intelligence of the leaders onto the organization? The first is that there is an easy flow of work, there is an easy flow of communication, it creates a low stress work environment, having everyone on the same page, working together and towards the same goal, and you are able to react quickly to unforeseen problems and finding the solutions very quickly. Now coming on to this, you have seen the benefits of the emotional intelligence in this regard. That is, once you think that your emotions are being taken care of, your emotions are being heard, and people are thinking about what you feel and how you behave. So in that case, you will not have any problems in sharing your communication or sharing your thoughts to the organization. So that is, it facilitates the communication process because people will understand that they have a place in that organization, followed by the level of the stress would be very low. The stress level rises because you are not being heard, but here you have a place to heard, you have a place of work where everything is according to you, according to the employee centric vision. So in that case, the stress levels would be very, very low, which is again good for the organization. It increases your motivation level, it increases your participation level, it increases your happiness level. Now, definitely you will be able to foresee the problems and you will also have a kind of a solutions to it. So we have seen till now that the historical perspective, that is, it started way back in 1990 and it picked up like a fire, and a lot of research has been done in this regard. Then we did the definition aspect of the emotional intelligence, then followed by what are the positive points of the emotional intelligence, in which we saw that if the people are emotionally intelligent and if they are able to control their emotions as well as they are able to control the emotions of the others, then of course the the overall there will be enhancement in the performance of the business organization. The performance levels would go up, the stress levels would go down, the motivation level will go up, the happiness index will also show the rising scales. Now coming on to the weaknesses of the emotional intelligence system. Now the leaders who lack the emotional intelligence will have serious repercussions. That is, they are not being empathetic, they are not being human, and the overall effects and the repercussions which they will see in the absence of the emotional intelligence is a very disastrous impact on the organization. So let us see the postulation aspects of this. The first is that it tends to have a difficulty in building relationships. Once you feel that you are not being heard and your emotions are being ignored, so definitely you cannot earn people. It is most important to earn people than to earn money. So this is the most negative impact of the emotional intelligence which is not there in the leaders, is that you will not be able to earn the members, the employees, which is again very bad. Then of course, typically you will have a poor communications. People will be inhibited to talk to you. People will be not free to talk to you, and they will start keeping the things to themselves. And one day there will be a volcanic eruptions. There will be strikes. There will be lockouts, and of course you will not be liked and your presence will not be liked in that organization. And of course, you will not be having any kind of a control on yourself, and you will be unaware of the emotions of the others also. So everything will go haywire. So you can see the negative impact of not having the emotional intelligence within the leaders. Now coming on to the detriments to the individual and the detriments to the organization. Not self-aware, have problems communicating with the team members, not good at developing relationships, have trouble controlling emotions, and are seen as impulsive and not being able to withstand the adverse events. So this is what we have inferred from not having the emotional intelligence with the leader, or not having the emotional intelligent leaders, is that you will not be able to have any kind of an awareness, you will not be able to perceive any kind of a problem, you will have problems in the communication as well, and you will have overall a very troublesome atmosphere which is not good for the organization. Now of course, these are the detriments to the organization also, that is, it creates a very stressful work environment which is not good for the organization, followed by you will have a disconnect with the employees. People will not talk to you, people will not come to you, people will not share anything with you. So this kind of an atmosphere is not definitely good for the organization. You will have lack of communication, clear communication between the employees and the employer. There is no clear-cut directions and seen as incompetent by the other employees. They will have a trouble adopting to change and handling the adverse events. So as a matter of fact, when you're working in an organization, you are bound to have a troublesome atmosphere because everything is changing, nothing is static. Like the technology is changing, the political scenario is changing, the social scenario is changing, the people are coming up with the different mindsets, the overall, the fashion design, the styles, everything is changing every second. So if you are living in such an environment, and this is going to stress the individuals, they will have their emotions outflow into them, outburst of the emotions into them. So it is very important to control these emotions, and in that backdrop it is very pertinent with the common day and with the modern day leaders to adapt, to learn to say yes to the emotions of the people. You have to understand the emotions to the deepest extent, because if you are unable to do that, everything will be chaotic, you will have a bad atmosphere, no communication, clear communication will be there, communication disorders will be there, people will be unhappy, no relationship building, stressful atmosphere, and overall everything negative will come your way. So it is very important for the members and the leaders to be emotionally intelligent. Now coming on to the strength and the weaknesses summary which we have done till now, let us have a look on this. The leadership abilities vary according to the Ratter perspective and the level of emotional intelligence. In general, the co-workers seem to appreciate the members' ability to control their impulses and anger, to withstand the adverse events and the stressful situations, to be happy with the life, and to be cooperative member of the group. These leaders are seen as participative, self-aware, composed and balanced. As Mr. Goldman wrote in the Harvard Business Review 1998, it is not the IQ and the technical skills are irrelevant, they do matter, but mainly a threshold capabilities are important. That is, they are every level requirement for executive positions. My research along with the other studies clearly shows that emotional intelligence is the sine qua non of the leadership. So this is very important to understand that the Goldman, who is called as a father of emotional intelligence, he also states that all the other factors are pertinent in this regard, but yes, having the emotional intelligence is very, very important for the organization to go its way, to go on the path of the success, and unless and until he has that, they will not be able to work to a best possible extent. Now let us start with the emotional intelligence implementation within the leadership styles. The first is charismatic, the second is situational, the third is servant, and the fourth is strategic. Now we will do these one by one. Maybe half of it we are able to finish and half of it we will be able to finish in the next half. So let us start now with the charismatic leadership. Now coming on the definition aspect of it, a leader who inspires his or her followers through the personal magnetism and high developed communication skills. That is, he has a charismatic character in terms of that whatever he will say, people will follow it, and his personality will be magnetic in nature. Now, according to Weber 1946, he claims that in charismatic relations, people no longer obey customs or laws. Instead, the followers submit to the imperious demands of a heroic figure whose orders are legitimated not by logic nor by the hero's place in ascribed hierarchy, but solely by the personal power to command of the charismatic leader. So overall, we have seen in this regard that if a leader is charismatic and he has the ability to attract, and he's like a magnet to whatever he says, people will agree to it. So these are the definitional aspect of a leadership. Now coming on to the types of the charismatic leadership, and then we will connect with the emotional intelligence. Now coming on to this, the first is the social awareness. That is, the use power to serve others, align their vision with the followers' needs and aspirations, maintain an open two-way communication, rely on the moral standards. Next is your personal competencies. That is, the use of the power for personal gain only, promote their own personal vision, maintain one-way communication, and rely on convenient external moral standards to satisfy themselves. So here we have seen that there are two types of charismatic leaders. The first is the social awareness. That is, they are able to serve the others. They are able to understand the needs and the aspirations of the other. They are having a very open mind communication, and of course they rely on the moral standards of the society. So this is one aspect, because you are not an isolated individual, you are living in a society. So it is very important for you to understand that you have to have, as a charismatic leader, a kind of a social awareness which is very, very important from the emotional point of view. Then you have to have the personal competencies in this regard. That is, the personal competency states that you have to use the power for the personal gain only, you have to promote their own personal vision, you have to maintain a one-way communication, rely on convenient external moral standards to satisfy the self-interest. So coming on to the types of the leaders we have done till now, the first was the social awareness and the second is the personal competencies which an individual must have. So we will give you certain examples which you will make understand. The first is the socialized, next is a personalized, then we have a socialized, and then we have a personalized. Then we have a situational leadership. The leader's traits and behavior, they evolve as a organizational climate changes. We have types of situation leadership, that is the goal path theory and the situational leadership theory. Now what is the situational leadership theory all about? The theory proposes that the optimal style of supervision changes as the level of the followers' maturity increases. That is, first is delegating, then is supporting, then is coaching, and then is directing. So you have seen that the role of the supervision is changing like a bell-shaped curve. In S4, we have the delegation, that is the low direction and low supportive behavior, that is the delegation. The second part is a supporting, that is the low direction and high supportive behavior. Then the bell curve changes to the bend, and then we have a coaching aspect, that is we have a high direction and high supporting behavior, followed by S1, that is the direction, it is the high direction and a low supportive. So it is S1, S2, S3 and S4. It starts with the direction, then with the coaching, then with the supporting, and then with the delegation. So whatever you says and whatever we have. If you go on the right of the continuum, we have a low directive behavior, and if you go up to the y-axis, we have a high supportive behavior. So the theory proposes that the optimal style of supervision changes as the follower increases their maturity level. As in when they mature, they understand the feelings very well, they understand the situations very well. So the role which is played by these the leaders, they keep changing. And as the leader determines the follower's maturity, they then have to decide the appropriate style of leadership for which the given follow and a situation. Now, as in when the followers increases, the level of understanding of the followers also is different. So, which style to follow, whether a directive style, a supportive style, a charismatic style, or a delegating style which has to be followed, it changes with the changing learning perspective of the followers or the employees in this case. So, we have seen a situational leadership theory which in which you can see from S1, S2, S3 and S4, the style changes as and when the maturity level changes of the employees in this case. Thank you so much. So now the next part of my lecture is emotional intelligence in charismatic and situational leadership. The charismatic leaders are regarded as the most emotional ones, and some even compare these relations to romantic love. The impact of an emotional intelligent leader will filter around all those they lead through the leader's charisma. Most of the contemporary theories of the leadership, that is the situational and charismatic, due to their interpersonal connection with their followers, are affected by the level of emotional intelligence of a leader. Now, the third type of a situation, the first we discussed was a charismatic leadership, and then we discussed upon the situational leadership as we have discussed in the first part. Now we discuss the emotional intelligence in charismatic and situational leadership. Now the third is your servant relationship. The servant leadership is a philosophy and a practice defined by Robert Greenleaf. The servant leaders donate themselves to serving the needs of the others, first in order to achieve the results within the organization, and the Winston and the Hallsfield 2004 proposed that similarities exist between the concepts of emotional intelligence and the servant leadership. Now we have a servant leadership according to Greenleaf 1977. He proposes that the servant leaders bring inspiration, reflection, empathy, foresight and relative aptitude to the service, all which involve the emotional intelligence with the leaders. There are three variables in the servant relationship. The first is the service, the second is the empowerment, and the third is the visioning. These are the three most important parameters of the servant leadership, that is the kind of service you do, the kind of empowerment you have, and the visioning aspect of it. Understanding the relating of the others is vital in taking followers' thoughts and the feelings into account as part of serving them and including them in the visioning process and empowering them. The leader's emotional intelligence can have an impact on the follower's perception of the servant leadership behaviors. Emotional intelligence can help the leaders to understand more accurately how they are able to perceive the emotions, reality, and understanding and relating to the emotions of the others. Then we have the servant leaders must have a sense of empathy to understand what the others' needs are, what others think, and to appreciate the circumstances that the others face. Now coming on to the fourth aspect, that is the strategic leadership. The strategic leadership is the ability to anticipate, prepare, and get positioned for the future. The primary goal of a strategic leader is to gain a better understanding of business conditions, the environment, new trends and situations that may arise. The strategic conditions and a leadership means a leader must be tuned into the signals that provide insight about the needs and the wants of the team members, management, suppliers and the customers. These leadership attributes to all incorporate the emotional intelligence. So basically you have to be very strategic in your leadership in terms of you have to understand what is what and what is what going on. You have to tune your aspirations, your needs in this regard. You have to understand the team members, you have to understand the management, suppliers and the customers. So all these leadership attributes have to be incorporated in the emotional intelligence. Only then you will be able to understand what is going on in the organization and how you have to catch up with the things and how you have to control the things which are very important for the organization in this regard. So unless and until a strategic leadership understands these qualities, unless and until he has an empathetic attitude, he will not be able to give any kind of a mileage to the organization. So we have seen till now the charismatic, the situational, the strategic and the servant kind of a leadership. These are the different styles, and emotional intelligence have to be baked amongst all leaders to make organization work. Now strategic leadership, a leader must be able to relate to and understand the customers and competitors in order to gain a competitive advantage. Resistance to change is generally an emotional reaction. The leaders that have high emotional intelligence are more likely to gain a competitive advantage. So here you have to understand that it is not always, important also and good also to change. So some people want to change, some people they do not want to change. The resistance to change, if they are showing, it is generally an emotion which has to be catched, which has to be managed. Then you will must understand the reactions of your customers, the reactions of your competitors. If you want to gain in that organization, if you want to catch up with the market penetration, etc. So the leaders that have a high emotional intelligence are more likely to be competitively advantaged than the others. Now what? Coming on to the most vital, pertinent, important aspect of today's lecture, that is the application of emotional intelligence. And this is what we study, and this is what we are, taking care of in this lecture. Bad decisions are not rooted in flawed logic, deficient math skills, poor understanding of business trends, and others usually suspect bad decisions result in emotional ignorance. So we have seen in this definition, which is given by the Tesler and Sue way back when they started with the concept of emotional intelligence. They say that any wrong decision taken in the organization, they are not blaming any kind of abilities, they are not taking care of the logic abilities, the mathematical abilities, the emotional abilities. Then of course poor understanding of the business trends, they are talking about ignoring the emotions. So from this definition, it is very, very clear that if you want to sustain and grow in the organization, the most important thing which you have to do is you have to understand the emotions of the people. You have to make them believe that your emotions are being heard and they have a voice in that organization, and it is definitely going to give the mileage if you are able to understand in deep the emotional intelligence of the people at large and the employees at large. So let us do this in detail. What is emotional ignorance? As this has been called as the main factor for the failures of the organization. So let us do in detail what the emotional ignorance is. And is emotional ignorance curable? Because emotional intelligence seems to be so touchy-feely, most managers steer clear of the subject. They build your emotional intelligence one attribute at a time. That is the awareness, practices, and the reinforcement. So the first thing which you have to do is that you have to be aware of the emotions of the people. Then you have to keep practicing and you have to reinforce the concept which you are using so that you are able to tackle the emotions at large. Now coming on to the emotions applications. Accomplishments flower garden. Let us have a look on this. Think of 2 to 3 accomplishments, label roots with values and lead to accomplishments. This is the application of emotional intelligence. Was it difficult to come up with the accomplishments? You have to ask a question. What did you learn about your values and accomplishments? Did you notice any consistent value and accomplishments? What values and characteristics are you proud of? How will these help you in the future accomplishments? So you have to prepare a personal competencies list in this regard, that is understanding your emotions first as they happen. Take note of what you are feeling as situations unfold, because once the situation is unfolded, you are able to see what kind of feelings you are having. So most important factor to catch up with the emotional intelligence competencies and the factors is that you must be able to understand your own emotions. After the unfolding of the situation. Being aware of your own natural reactions, that is how you are going to react in a particular situation, and will help you in better understanding of how you base your decisions on that. Just because you are cover up your emotion does not mean that they disappear. Sometimes we are human beings. We are having emotions but we hide them. So you also have to understand that, because some people are very open up. Some people are very introvert. So some people show their emotions and the face is the index of mind, it comes on their faces. But some people are, they are able to hide their emotions, what they are thinking, nobody will even come to know. So that is even more dangerous for such people who are not showing their emotions to a great possible extent. Then you have to step away from the emotional situation. Be aware of the situation as they happen. Acknowledge the time for you to take up a step back and analyze the situation before you are emotionally reacting. So sometimes you have to understand your own situation, you have to understand your own emotions, and sometimes you have to take a step back because you understand that this emotional situation is going to happen. So it is better to step back before you emotionally act. Sometimes we give this kind of a reaction that let me go out. If I stay this in discussion, I will blast. So that means they are taking a step back from this situation, and they can anticipate the situation is going to be bad and it is going to be weird, it is going to be worse. So they do not want to be a part of that organization. So it is important also to step back, to stay away from that situation unless and until it is unfolded. Then you have to prepare yourself for the feelings of uncertainties. You don't know what is going to happen with you. Each day we take decisions and uncertain outcomes. This tends to make us very uncomfortable. One of the hardest things for most of us is to accept the fact that we cannot control the outcomes or each decision, but we can control our own reaction to it. So this is very, very important because sometimes your reactions can really worsen the situation. The first step which we talked about is that, the vital aspect which we talked about is that you have to understand your emotions as and when, and you have to step away from the emotional situation. Then you have to prepare yourself for the feelings of uncertainties, and you have to say no to a reaction. Even if you know what is going to happen, you're not going to show that any kind of a situation that you already know that this is the reaction. So you have to control your reactions in this case. Then coming on to the we talked about the personal competencies, now we talked about the social competencies and the organizational competencies. This is also most important to understand deeply the application part of the emotional intelligence. Build trusting the relationship. Unless we deepen and expand the trust actively in our work, relationship and organizations, we shall suffer from lack of genuine community within our teams. It is going to encourage the open discussion and brainstorming time. Emotionally bankrupt communication devalues all of us. Creating the future, developing a skill which allows you to see and strength and various views so that you are able to create a cohesive team. This skill allows a team to solve the problems, make strategic decisions, and work within the competitive advantage. So in this particular slide, we have talked about the competencies which is in relation to the organization, which is in relation to the social aspect. The first thing is that you have to build a relationship. Building a relationship is most important, and unless the relationship deepens and it expands the trust actively in our work, we will not be able to do anything much about it. Then you have to encourage the open conversation, open discussion, kind of a brainstorming session. This is going to be very good because any decision which is deficient of any emotional aspect, it is going to devalue all of us because we are all humans, we are all full of emotions. So you have to keep the emotions under control whenever you are taking any kind of a decision. Then you have to create the future. Developing a skill which allows you to see each strength and weakness of yours. Only if that particular skill is developed, you will be able to make a very cohesive team, very intelligent and a rational team, which can give you a good profit and a good profit margin, and the performance of the organization may go up. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. What is your level of emotional intelligence? Are you aware of your feelings affect others? Are you able to detect how others are feeling, even if it is not verbalized? Are you sensitive to others' needs? How does stress affect you and you are able to work well? Can you stay focused on the long-term goals even when you are angry, upset and disappointed? Are you able to express your feelings without being disruptive to team environments? So we have seen here the list of questionnaire, and it is important for all of us, that is, we have to be very particular about the self-awareness. And if you are able to have that kind of an awareness, that is a key to success of the emotional intelligence, and it is the basic foundation of emotional intelligence. That is, You should know what your feelings are. You should know others' feelings also. You should know what your act is going to have an impact on the emotional aspects of the others. Similarly, the vice versa. If you are able to manage the stress, you should be able to understand that to what extent the stress affects your work levels and efficiency levels. Are you able to complete and completely understand the long-term goals, even if you are upset, angry and disappointed? Because these are the situations in which the human beings are not going to behave nicely. If you are disappointed with the organization, if you are unhappy with the organization, if you are angry on certain aspects and issues, how will you be able to take a good decisions? So you have to understand these aspects very nicely, and this is what the self-awareness talks about. Then we have a AMBA cohort EI levels. You can see in this particular graph the chart on the scale of 0 to 5, with 5 being the highest rating of concern and perspective. 15 classmates participated in the test. You can see the yellow part in perspective, and the second one is concern. So what is the conclusion of this part? Empathy, that is understanding from the other's point of view. That is, if you are able to have that empathetic attitude in you, you will be able to counter these situations very well. Then you have manage your own emotions. Managing your own emotions is also very important, because if you are unable to manage your own emotions, you will not be able to manage the others also. Sometimes we want to be a part of a situation, sometimes we want to run away from the situation, sometimes we want to be very reactive, sometimes we are very docile, sometimes we want to participate aggressively, sometimes we want to stay out of the situation. So you have to manage your own situations and emotions in the best possible manner. Because if it is not managed, and if you are not able to realize what kind of situations are, you will not be able to do anything in the life. Then you have to understand observing the other's emotions as well, because sometimes the organization is very bad. You are not able to understand the interplay of emotions of your employees and between themselves and between the employer and the employees. Why so? Because some people are so smart that they hide their emotions, they do not want to discuss any part of it. So in that case, how to react on a particular situation, how to go about in a particular situation is very, very difficult. Now you should have a talent to generate the emotions that facilitate the decision making. Now we come out and there are outbursts of many emotions, because we are human beings. And unless and until we are able to understand your own feelings, unless and until we are able to understand what kind of emotions they are, we will not be able to take any kind of a decision making. Certain types of emotions are not important. They are, just an outburst, and because we are human beings. But certain emotions, they affect our decision making. So as a rational human being, you should be able to discriminate between the accurate and inaccurate emotions. You should be able to understand the emotions which is going to give you a mileage in decision making or not. So if you are able to do that, if you are able to generate the emotions, you are able to take a facilitation of the decision making, then it is your success. Then is inspiring. Then of course you should be able to inspire others. Then you should be open to cultivating relationship, and relationship can only come if you talk your heart and soul, if you have a discussion which is full of emotions. And because any emotion, any discussion which is out because of not having the absence of the value system and the emotions is going to devalue all the human beings. Then of course you should be able to have an open communication system also, so that whatever they have in mind, it comes your way, and whatever you have in your mind, it also comes your way, so that we are able to develop a consensus in this regard. Not inherent traits, but the learned skills. So this is also important, that you are able to learn the skills, and you are able, because it is not inborn. You have to learn the skills, you have to be a part of that, and only then you will be able to control your emotions very well. So overall we can see here that we have seen till now, let us have a recap, because recapping is very important from the organization's learning point of view and from the students' learning point of view, because unless and until you have the summary part of it, it will not be able to affect you and will not be able to have a learning experience for you. So let us have a look on this once again. We started with the emotional intelligence in the leadership styles, followed by the emotional intelligence definition, that is continuously monitor your own emotions, followed by the emotions of the others. You have to have a very encouraging atmosphere in this regard. You have to be very positive for the organization. Then with the sole purpose of enhancing the business performance, that is, if you are able to manage yourself and if you are able to manage the emotions of the others also, the success is very, very sure. Now let us have two categories which we did. The two categories of emotional competencies are the personal competencies and the social competencies and the social awareness. The personal competencies we talked about was a self-awareness and the self-management, and the second is a social competency and the social awareness, that is the social awareness and the social skills. Now we came on to the four key components of the emotions, that is perceiving emotions, that is identify the feelings, expressing emotions accurately, discriminating between the accuracy and the inaccuracy of the feelings. Then of course, if you are able to perceive the emotions in the right perspective, you are able to use them in also a nice perspective, because there are certain emotions which are generated and which help in the decision making process. Then we talked about understanding of the emotions, that is you have to comprehend the complex emotions, you have to have a cause of the complex emotions, you have to transitions between one emotion to another. Then of course we have a managing emotions, being aware of one's positive as well as the negative emotions. So you have to solve the emotionally driven problems in a very pertinent way. You have to reflect the monitor emotions also. Then we did the historical perspective of the emotional intelligence, that is there are two types, one is the heart based and the other is the mind based. Then we did the ancient historical perspective, followed by the recent historical perspective, that is after understanding the importance of the emotional intelligence. There were plethora of research studies which were conducted in India and abroad, and the year was 1990. That is, in 1990 it begins with the explosion of the research on the emotional intelligence. That is, it started with the Salome and the Meyer in 1990, followed by the Goldman in 1995. And of course, he is considered to be the father of emotional intelligence, and he gave a lot of contribution of the emotional intelligence in this regard. Then we did the strength and the weaknesses of the emotional intelligence. That is, if the leaders are emotionally intelligent, they will be able to have an empathetic attitude, they will be sensitive towards the feelings of the people, they will be able to understand the short circuit conversations, they will be able to have a self-awareness and the awareness of the others. And of course, the ability to react on a particular situation are also good, and they will be able to build the relationship to a great possible extent. Then we did the strength of the emotional intelligent leaders, that is what benefits it is going to give on to the organizations. First was the participative management, that is the people putting people at ease, the self-awareness, straightforwardness, composure, building and mending relationships. What benefits it gave to the organization is that the flow of the communication became very easy. The environment which was generated was of course of low stress, and of course having everyone on the same page working towards the same goal, and last but not the least, they are able to react and they are prepared also to the unforeseen situations which may or may not arise. Now we had certain weaknesses also of the system, that is the leaders who lack the emotional intelligence, they have to be very difficult in building the relationships. Typically poor communicators and not able to handle the adversities to the change, they have to tend to not to the self-awareness but a little control over the unaware reactions of the others in this regard. Then we have the weaknesses of the emotional intelligence members also. So that is, if you are not able to catch up with the emotions, it is going to be detrimental to the individuals and it is going to be detrimental to the organization. Why it is detrimental to the individual is that you are not self-aware, you will have problems with communicating with the others, not good in developing relationship with the others, and you are having a trouble with controlling of emotions with the others. And how it is detrimental to the organization also, because the environment which is created, which is not full of emotions, it is going to be very stressful, There will be a lack of communication disorders in this regard, and of course, you will not be able to adapt the changes, and you will resist changes in this regard because you will not be able to handle the adverse circumstances in this case. Then we did 4 types of leadership, that is the charismatic, situational, servant and strategic. The charismatic leader is one who is very good in his profession, etc., and who is very good in this regard, and because of the social awareness and the personal competencies, he'll be able to develop that empathetic attitude and will be able to counter the emotions to a great possible extent. The situational leaders are those the leadership traits and behaviors evolve as the organizational change occurs, that is the goal path theory and the situational leadership theory. And of course, when we talked about the situational leadership theory, it was a bell-shaped curve, and the level of the participation of the maturity level of the employees changes this curve also, that is from S1, S2, S3 and S4. And of course, when you talked about the servant leadership, it is a wholehearted devotion of an individual towards the organizational matters, which we completed. And then we came on to a strategic leadership, that is, you have to be very strategic in understanding others so that you are able to apply the best policies to influence them and understand the business conditions and apply the new trends and the situations to counter the emotional intelligence and to give the best to the organization so that the organizational performance and the profits may go up. So, one of the major factors which was highlighted in today's presentation was that if the organization is suffering a lot, so mainly the main reason for its fall is not the capabilities, the rational capabilities, the deficient math skills, it is the ignorance of the emotions. So nowadays in the organization behavior and the organizations of today, the most important and the pertinent fact is that you have to counter the emotions, you have to be very empathetic if you want to win the world and penetrate the market in your area. You cannot ignore the human emotions at any cost because it is going to jeopardize the organization's capabilities, the organizational reputation, the organizational performance and the organizational profits. So we have to be very strategic, very understanding to counter this kind of an emotional intelligence and be baked into the culture of the organization policies if you want to have the success in the future. Thank you so much.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for the productive session once again. And dear friends, as we always say that your feedbacks are important for us. So do write to us at info.cc@nic.in. We would be meeting again soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again.